When you look at the tight end position, Clemson definitely has the upper hand.
You are Locked On Clemson, your daily podcast on the Clemson Tigers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of the Locked On Clemson podcast. My name is John Bivens. I'm your host here for the show every day. You can follow us over on Twitter at I am John Bivens. We are a credentialed media member where we go down to the media rooms, get press conference, that kind of stuff with Clemson football, baseball, and basketball. Thanks so much for making Locked On Clemson your first listen every day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcast at and over on YouTube. We are a part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Here on Locked On Clemson, you're getting three things. You're getting all sports, all passion, all of the time, and we are bringing you everything you need to know regarding Clemson sports. Today's a great episode for you. It is Friday, August 23rd. We're going to be talking about the tight end, who has a better tight end group, who has a better offensive line group, and then tough time at Little John Coliseum possibly this year, with tough time in the basketball with all the opponents coming to Clemson at home. It's going to be a tough season. So we're going to talk about all that and more. Today's episode is brought to you by Ultimate College Football HC. It's a brand new mobile game that is completely free, has no ads, and 100% playable offline. Use the promo code LOCKEDONCFB, all caps, inside the game store to receive a free boost to your program. Begin your coaching legacy today. At the tight end position, Clemson definitely has the edge. Look, I know for a couple years now, when you say Georgia and you say tight end, you immediately think Brock Bowers, right? I mean, he's drafted. He was one of the best tight ends to be drafted in a long time. Kyle Pitts was up there, but he's been a little disappointed in NFL. But he's going to be great. I don't know if he's going to have a huge impact this year, but I think he's going to make a difference. He is a great player. And if he was still on the team, Georgia would by far have the upper hand. But where the teams are right now, when you look at Clemson and Georgia in the tight end position now, Clemson has the upper hand at the tight end position. We're in the middle of this series where we're going through and ranking the positional groups. We talked about the quarterbacks, running backs, wide receivers. Today we're continuing that, and we're looking at where Clemson's at right now compared to where Georgia's at right now, and who has the upper hand between the two. Who has the upper hand at each of these positional groups? And when it comes to the tight end position, Clemson has the advantage. And I say this because Jake Brenningstool is just on a different level when he comes to his connectedness with Cade Klubnik. It feels like Jake provides someone that Cade can look to every single play. Jake is going over his stats. He's a 6'6", 240-pound senior out of Brentwood, Tennessee, right outside of Nashville. Last year, he had his best year by far. His freshman year, played in 8 games, didn't start any, only had 3 receptions on the year for 67 yards. His sophomore year, he started 1 game, played in 14, had 25 receptions for 280 yards. And then last year, he played in 13 games, started 12 of those, 50 receptions for almost 500 yards with 5 touchdowns. His longest pass was 50 receptions last year. While those stats aren't like, dang, that's amazing, right? Like, that's not the best ever, but it's really good stats. And it's something that shows that he is someone that Cade can rely on. Clemson has the edge at tight end because we have a proven tight end receiver that can block and he can receive, and he's proven to be a valuable weapon to a quarterback, even when the quarterback is struggling. Look, we're going to go over more about Jake in a second, but when you look at Clemson or Georgia's tight end position group, their tight ends are Oscar Delp, and then a graduate transfer for Ben Yorsick, sophomore Lawson Lucky, and then a freshman Jaden Reddle. None of them are proven. Their junior Oscar Delp, that's a fun name, Oscar Delp. I like that. But he's a 6'5", 245 junior out of West Cumming, Georgia. He is only he doesn't have a lot. He doesn't have a lot of stats. His freshman year, he saw action in 13 of the games, had 5 catches for 60 yards. And then his sophomore season last year, he played in every game. He started 10 times, but he caught 24 passes for 280 yards. That only 3 touchdowns on the season. That he's not proven. I mean, granted, he was playing behind Brock Bowers, right? He's playing behind one of the best tight ends to play in college football, which there's no doubt about that. But at the same time, he's unproven. So when you look at these two programs, when you look at where these two are at the tight end group right now, you've kind of got to make sure that when you're evaluating them, you got to look at where they are right now. And one team has a proven tight end. One has one that they're still trying to prove who he can be when it comes down to the program. When it comes down to who he is, who can he truly be? And the answer is clear. We don't know. And because we don't know, that means we have to give the edge to Clemson at the tight end group with Jake Brenningstool. He's excellent. He's a big receiver. I mean, and let's just spend a minute talking truly about our wide receiver or our tight end group real quick. I'll be honest, I don't think Jake Brenningstool is the only reason we had the advantage. When you go deeper in, our backup is Josh Sapp, who's a redshirt sophomore. We also have Olsen Pat Henry, who's a sophomore, and I think he's going to be excellent. Next year, when Jake Brenningstool's gone, I really think Olsen Pat Henry is probably going to be our starter. But then we got Banks Pope, and we have Christian Betancourt, who was a big-time recruit this year, a freshman. He was a huge recruit we were all really pumped when we received him. So that was awesome to see. He's a 6 foot Christian Betancourt. I think he's going to be really big too as well. But he's a 6'4" freshman, 245 pounds as well. He was a consensus top 125 player nationally, according to 24/7. So from top to bottom, we have the players that prove why we have that big group. And now we've talked about this a little bit in the past, but I want to truly dive in and see like why we think Jake Brenningstool makes this group so much better. And the reason is this. You see in the Miami game last year, you saw in the Carolina game, you saw in the Kentucky game, you saw in a couple different games. There's multiple times where it felt like Cade had nowhere to go, felt like Cade was stuck, and Jake Brenningstool bailed him out. He'd run a little in route and then a curl, or he'd run a deep post route. He'd run some kind of route where Cade knew wide receiver 1's not there, wide receiver 2's not there, running back's covered. I'm getting it to Jake. They had that connection, they had that ability, and when you have the chemistry, when you have the confidence, when you have the ability to truly rely on someone at that level, when you have a tight end at that caliber, at that level, it changes the gameplay. It changes the potential that the quarterback can have. And so Georgia doesn't have that. We don't know that Georgia has that this year. Just because, Oscar Delp started a lot last year. Even with that, he didn't have a lot in the receiving game. He didn't show off a lot of capability, didn't show off a lot of talent. He really showed nothing that would say that he's going to be this massive target. And so because of that, Jake Brenningstool gets the nod. When it comes to the tight end group, Clemson gets the nod, gets the upper hand when it comes to the tight end position. But we're going to take a quick break, and after, we're going to go through who at the last offensive group and the offensive line, who has the upper hand there. We'll talk about it in a second. Hey, Locked On Clemson fans, I want to take a moment and give you a heads up on a brand new mobile game that I think you're going to love as much as I do. Ultimate College Football HC. In this amazing game and simulation, you get to slap into the shoes of a head coach and lead your college football team to glory. Can you imagine really being the head coach of Clemson? From recruiting players to hiring coach staff to overseeing training games, handling school scholarships, you control every crucial detail of your program. It's all in your hands. Will you be able to handle the pressure? And here's why I really love the game. You're responsible for calling offensive plays during the game. Your strategy not only is going to determine the success of the season, but also shape the future and legacy of your program. Ultimate College Football is completely free, has no ads, and 100% playable offline. You can play on the go as you want and when you want. And, of course, we have a special offer for Locked On Clemson. Use promo code LOCKEDONCFB, all caps, inside the game store to receive a free boost to start your program. Make sure to take advantage of this perk, as it'll get your team off to a strong start. Download the game, visit the ultimate-cfb.com or look it up on the App Store. Ultimate College Football HC, bring your coaching legacy today. When it comes to the offensive line, Georgia has the better room than Clemson. I hate to admit that. I hate to say it. I hate to admit, honestly, you don't want to admit any kind of like upper hand. We've done it a couple times now when you look at the offensive line. But when it comes down to it, Georgia just has the potential, and they have the proof that they have a better offensive line than we do. When you look at who is the best offensive line in all of college football, you see a couple names at the top, right? You see a couple names of schools that are very much make sense. that they're up there. You do not see Clemson up there. Clemson is their offensive line is one of the reasons we had some struggles last year. Let's be frank, our offensive line was pretty rough. When you look at the top 5 offensive lines, you see Oregon at 5, Texas at 4, LSU at 3, Georgia at 2, Alabama 1. So Georgia has the second best offensive line in all the nation. And most people say that right there. That's not a hot take. That's not me putting something out there. Just be like, oh yeah, let's clickbait. No, it's pretty proven. Georgia has the second best offensive line. And a lot of people say they'd have the best offensive line in the state. And the key to their success is this. One word, experience. Four out of their 5 starters have been in the college football world for 4 years or more. They have 2 that are redshirt seniors, 2 redshirt juniors, and 1 redshirt sophomore starting. And then on the bench, that's when their young people come in. In the bench, they have a sophomore, a true freshman, redshirt sophomore, redshirt junior, and redshirt freshman. And then on the other bench, they got 3, or in their third string, they've got 3 freshmen and 2 redshirt freshmen. They have experience, which allows the younger guys to grow under them. So when they become the experienced ones, they have younger guys under them. They've got this amazing cycle that they've figured out. Their starting offensive line right now, at center, they've got Jared Wilson. Guards, they have Tate Ratledge and Dylan Fairchild. And then tackles, they have Ernest Green III, as well as Xavier Truss. They've got a great offensive line. You looked at last year, and yeah, their running game wasn't the best. They had a good running game, but they weren't known for that for sure. But their offensive line was able to create holes. No matter who they were going for, they were able to shift in. They were able to get around. There wasn't a lot of mistakes. There wasn't a lot of times where it was like the offensive line failed them, right? No, it was a running back made a bad read, or just playing against a really good defensive line or defensive group. Their quarterback or their offensive line played really, really well. And here's a big factor. The offensive line for Georgia gave Carson Beck so much time in the pocket. He got rushed a couple times. Of course, he got sacked his fair share, but nowhere near as much as Clemson. And it's their offensive line allowed them to be protected. It allowed him to have time, to have confidence, to have the ability to not only may look at his first read, but look at his read progressions, to look at 1, 2, 3, right? They gave him time. They gave him protection. They gave him a comfortability. And one of the worst things you can give an experienced quarterback as a defense is allow them to be comfortable in the pocket. Georgia's offensive line does that over and over and over again. They provide Carson Beck to have so much. It's like a second home there. He could set up a tent, right? He can be comfortable in the pocket because he can trust his offensive line. They've got the second best unit in the nation. There's no doubt about that. Now looking at Clemson's offensive line, there's some work. There's some work. And I think they've made some work this offseason. I think they've took huge strides. When you look at last year, Cade Klubnik got sacked 28 times. 28 different times was Cade Klubnik sacked last year. The year before, 28 times Cade Klubnik was sacked. So in the past 2 years, he's been sacked 56 times. Or that's how many sacks Clemson has allowed the past 2 years. Cade obviously hasn't had that many because the year before he didn't start most of the year. But past 2 years, our offensive line has allowed our quarterback to be sacked almost 60 times. You want to say what that doesn't provide? It doesn't provide a sense of comfortability. It doesn't provide the sense of comfort. When the quarterback is being sacked almost 30 times a year, if you play 12 games, that's almost 3 times a game, right? That's 2.5 times a game. You're not going to have success there. That's not going to provide a sense of confidence. It's not going to allow Cade to be comfortable in the pocket. And I think we saw that last year. I think Cade definitely made mistakes. He made bad reads. He tried to play hero ball. But you've got to attribute some of the reason that he didn't have success to not being able to have an offensive line that he could fully trust and rely on. When you're running for your life, when you're worried about getting hit from all angles, now you're going from, let me look at progression 1. Who's my first read? Not there. Offensive line, am I good? Second read, and when you're doing that, when you can't just read your progressions, when you have to be focusing on the defensive line coming through, it causes you to make mistakes. Then all of a sudden you're late to your progressions. You're late on a pass because you had to look up, right? Or you're rolling out, or you're not getting your hands feet, or you miss the cut that the wide receiver made. You're not be able to get your feet set because you're getting ready to run. It creates all these different problems. And last year, Clemson experienced a lot of those. It caused a lot of problems. When you look at this offseason, though, I really believe that Clemson made a lot of great strides. So I don't think the gap is as massive. If you compare Georgia offensive line to Clemson last year's, very, very different. This year, I think we're starting to close that gap. We brought in Coach Matt Luke, who is absolutely amazing. He actually was an offensive line coach at Georgia for a couple of years. But he brought him in, and he has definitely started making differences. He started changing up our training program for the offensive line. They've been going through a completely different training program this offseason, spring camp, fall camp. We also came in. He's already upped our recruiting. Like, we've already started getting completely different recruits, different star, different caliber, different style recruits for the upcoming years. He was really heavy on offering scholarships out, getting his kind of players to come into this program in the near future. So that's exciting. We've took some great steps. Our offensive line for this year, we have a brand new center. We lost our center from last year due to graduation, but this year we have Ryan Lithicum. At the guards, we have Walker Parks and Marcus Tate. And at the tackles, we have Tristan Lay and Blake Miller. Experience is another word you could use for this offensive line. Ryan Lithicum got some time last year. The thing about Clemson is this. When it comes to offensive line, we've very much been a school that likes to rotate. We've been one that likes to rush 9, 10 guys out there, to rotate them out there, keep the legs fresh. Last year, we didn't have 6 guys that were talented enough to do that, much less 10. So a lot of the guys were on the field very consistently, very often. This year, according to Coach Matt Luke and Dabo, apparently we've got like 6, 7 guys, so we're almost back to that 10 point. I would say our 6th and 7th is, I think, Colin Sadler, who is a backup left guard. I think he's good enough to play at either guard position. I think Harris Sewell, who is listed as a right guard, I think he could get some time at center, honestly. He can move around. I think he's really good. We have a freshman, Elijah Thurman, that I think give him a couple games, a little bit of time to get his feet wet, to get his feet set in the system. I think he'll be good there. So our offensive line, while we have the experience, we got some good backups. I think the key word for Clemson's offensive line is time. I think we've got to get them time to grow under Coach Matt Luke. We've got to get them time to adjust to a new coaching system for the offensive line. Basically a new program. They're not shifting schemes or anything like that, but you got to know the new reads that he's calling out. You got to know his kind of gameplay, what he likes to see, what he likes to do in practice. Very different schemes than our last offensive line coach. So because of that, you got to give him time. There's got to be a series of adjustment period. And even if they come out amazing, if they're very more successful than last year, that'll be awesome. It'll be very surprising to me if we outperform Georgia with our offensive line. And that's one of the most crucial parts of the game. One of the most underrated, underappreciated positions on the group or on the field at all times is the offensive line. Without them, you're not doing anything. Your quarterback's not throwing it if they can't guard or block them. Your running back's not running if they're letting people run through the holes, right? Like, everything starts with the offensive line. The play starts and the play ends with offensive line. So it's important. And unfortunately, Georgia does get the edge, the upper hand at the offensive line position over Clemson. Now, let's switch gears. Let's talk about something that we haven't talked about in a long time, and that is Clemson men's basketball. Great year last year, very successful year last year. This coming year, they might have a lot of problems on the hardwood, especially against our stacked home opponents that we have to face. Hey guys, I want to talk to you about something that is absolutely amazing, and that is Gametime. Gametime is an amazing place where you can go to find all of your ticket needs. They have a new feature called Gametime Picks that makes getting tickets to your favorite team or in your favorite events and your favorite sporting games even easier. Gametime Picks filters out the fluff to show you how incredible deals on great seats. You don't have to waste your time searching through thousands and thousands of tickets. I mean, upcoming Labor Day is coming off. They got 50% off just for games on Labor Day, and they do that all the time. I know I recently looked at getting tickets, just looking to see how much the Clemson, Georgia tickets are going. They have this amazing thing on Gametime Picks where they're going through and talking about the deals right there. They've got a deal right now where you can get a ticket to that game for only $125, which is cheap compared to what everything else is going. So Gametime's got amazing deals on there. I love the fact that you get a panoramic view of every single seat you're going to buy, so you know exactly what to pick. You know exactly what to expect when you're shopping for tickets. It's got curated deals to make it easier to find tickets. It's got a super deal that allows amazing things. It's low in price, guaranteed. Make sure that you download the Gametime app now. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app now. Create an account. Use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account. Use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off. Download Gametime today. What time is it? It's Gametime. Clemson has a hard schedule when it comes to home opponents this coming basketball season. Hey, welcome back to Locked On Clemson podcast. Last year, Clemson basketball had an amazing year, and that's coming off a year that at the beginning of it, a lot of fans, and I kind of me, kind of not me. Some people would say more me than I would say, but would say that they were calling for Brad Brownell to be fired. There was a lot of people saying that this team's inconsistent. This team can't do it. This team doesn't have the talent, doesn't have the ability. A lot of people hating on this team. And they came out hot. They started off on a great game, lost to Memphis in Memphis. That was a tough one, but had a great year last year. Terrible ACC performance, lost an ugly game in the ACC tournament, but then went to the March Madness and we made it all the way to the Elite Eight. Had to beat some great teams. We lost to Alabama the second time we faced them. We beat them the first game early on in the season in the ACC SEC Challenge, but we did lose to them in the March Madness in the Elite Eight. I think we should have won that game, but we did not. But it was a great game. It was a great year last year. It was very positive. It was this coming year, we're going to have to battle back. We lost some key people. We lost PJ Hall, who's now with Hunter Tyson on the Denver Nuggets. We lost Jack Clark, who transferred to his 9th school in 5 years. Not that many, but you get the point. We've got some people we've got to replace. We lost RJ Godfrey, who is a very energy locker room guy, great guy. We lost him. We still got some great players. We've got Chase Hunter. We've got Chauncey Wiggins, Ian Shefflin, right? The chef is back. We got some great talent. We've got some transfers coming in like Zachary. We've got some good people coming in. We've got some good recruits coming in. Del Thomas, Ace Buckner. We've got some people coming in that should be good, should be a good team. But this year, when it comes to the hardwood, especially protecting the court at Little John Coliseum, we're in for a hard time. If you haven't heard, we have released our home opponents. This year, we are hosting, not only playing. I'm not talking playing. I'm talking hosting. We are hosting 5 of the 8 winningest programs in college basketball history. 5 of them. Right? So we are hosting Kentucky is going to come to Clemson. We are hosting them in the ACC SEC Challenge. We're hosting Duke and North Carolina and Syracuse in our ACC. It's our year in the ACC to host them as we rotate opponents and where they're playing every year. And we also host Notre Dame. When it comes to basketball history in college, we're hosting 5 of the 8 winningest programs in college basketball history. That is wild. That is a lot. Very hard, very, very hard performances when it comes to it. They did our non-conference schedule. They have released there. The teams we're going to be playing at home is Augusta University to start it off. That's an exhibition game. Charleston Southern, St. Francis, Eastern Kentucky, Radford again, San Francisco, but that'll be at Sunshine State and the Dayton Beach. But then we also play Florida A&M. We host Kentucky. We host Memphis, and then we go to South Carolina. Those are just our non-conference schedules. Those are just our non-conference teams. But conference, like we said, we host North Carolina. We host Duke. We host Syracuse. We host Notre Dame. We've got a lot of hard opponents. So Clemson, they've got a challenge. They've got to make a run, right? They want to have this time where they make a run. Be the first time that Brad goes back-to-back years making the NCAA tournament since 2010, 2011. That'd be amazing, right? The one thing you can't say about Brad is consistency. He hasn't had that. I know some people say, oh, he's made the tournament in 3 out of the past 7 years. Yes, but he hasn't made the tournament in 4 out of the past 7 years, right? He's been there since I believe it was 2012 is when he came in there. This is his 15th season, so 2009. He's going into his 15th season, and he's only made the tournament 4 times. And one of those times was the first time, his first season when he was carrying off Oliver Purnell's team that was put together. So 4 times in 14 years, that's not going to cut it. I got to see some consistency. Got to see back-to-back entrances. Got to see back-to-back entrances into the March Madness tournament. That's what we got to see, and he's got a hard time to do it with these opponents coming in to a Little John Coliseum. Do I think it's impossible? No, not at all. I think we win some of these games. We just list those 5. Let's just talk about those 5. Notre Dame, I think we've got the team to beat this year. North Carolina, I think we beat them. I know they got a good recruit class coming in, but they lost their big guy with Armando Bacot. I think we beat them. We beat them last year in Chapel Hill. We can do it again. Duke will be tough. I don't know if we have someone that can stick with Cooper Flagg, and that's just one of their 10 players that could start anywhere else in the nation. Chauncey Wiggins could kind of stick with him. If we had Jack Clark, I'd feel a lot better about it, but that'll be a tough game. Then Syracuse, I think we can beat Syracuse. I think that's 3 wins. And then Kentucky, that's a hard one. Let's just say we lose that win just to be safe. If we walk out of those games, out of those 5, and we win 3 out of those 5, you got to put that successful. You got to mark that up as a success. It's going to be a hard year in the hardwood, especially at Little John Coliseum, but it's going to be a great year. I can't wait to be down there cheering them on, rooting for the team. It's going to be great. So, but with all that being said, that is going to wrap up this edition of the Locked On Clemson podcast. Thanks so much for making Locked On Clemson your first listen every day. Now go check out the Locked On College Football podcast, from NIL deals to never-ending conference realignment rumors. Spencer McCaughlin gets you ready for an exciting season on the gridiron. You can find the link to Locked On College Football in the description, so you don't need to search. Part of the Locked On podcast, your team every day. Later this next week, starting on Monday, we're going to get ready. Is the week of college football. We're going to talk about Florida State, Georgia Tech. Exciting game this weekend. We're going to see what happens there. We'll talk about SMU. We get to see our first visit of our first view of SMU as an ACC team. So excited weekend as college football kicks off tomorrow. We'll talk about all of the results from that and more Clemson football next week. Make sure you join our Locked On Clemson Insider program, where you can have one-on-one conversations and bonus episodes. Text Clemson to 864-252-1907. If you haven't, make sure you subscribe to this podcast wherever you get your podcast at, or on YouTube. That way, every day we can be your first listen here on Locked On Clemson podcast. Make sure to check out other podcasts from the Locked On Podcast Network. We can't wait to see you in Monday's episode next week. Until then, keep that Tiger pride alive and roaring. And as always, you go Tigers.